All right, everyone. Everyone? All right, everyone, are we ready to get started on the January? All right, let's go ahead and get started this is the January 9th Parks and Recreation Commission meeting. Rachel, can you go ahead and take roll?
Yes, thank you. Jessica West.
Present.
Tom Gelsomino.
Present.
Keith Bevan.
Present.
Joe Breer.
Present.
Michelle Jensen.
Present.
Jackson Jones is absent. John Nesmith.
Here.
Mike Pepin is absent. Craig Steele is absent.
Thank you, Rachel. Can I get an adoption of the agenda for tonight's meeting, please?
Madam President, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the agenda as presented.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, is there a motion for the approval of the December 12th, 2018 regular meeting minutes?
Madam President,
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the December 12th, 2018 regular meeting minutes as presented.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Joe.
Joe Gray.
Motion carries. And now we're already up to announcements with our Shelley Houston.
No applause, just throw money. Again this month, we're woefully low on events. So again, this is that time of the year where after our hectic Christmas season, we're catching our breath and putting all our little ducks in a row to be ready for when the season opens again. So I do have a few random announcements that I think might be of use to you. Oh, yes, ma'am.
I was telling Craig right here. Sorry.
Oh, hello, Mr. Steele. Welcome. Anyhow, I would remind you, and I didn't make additional flyers since I gave them to you last month, but as you remember, our State of the City address is coming up on Wednesday, February 6th at the Galaxy Event Center over at Wahoo's. And so that's something that you do need to let someone know you plan to attend. Morgan up in the mayor's office, I think, is keeping the head count. Just know, in case it comes up in conversation, anyone who wants to just attend the address can do so for free. But if they want to stick around for the vittles, the Taste of Meridian little food reception, then they need to purchase a $10 ticket. So free to just hear the speech, $10 for the meal. So that's available through the mayor's office. I don't know if you noticed this, maybe you saw on Facebook. Our former mayor, of course, Bob Corey, passed away, and there was a very lovely funeral on Friday over at the Methodist Church here downtown. And just yesterday, we were able to dedicate the conference room, what we used to call Conference Room A and B, in his honor. So it's now called the Robert D. Corey Community Conference Room. And so if you ever see that on meeting minutes or a meeting invitation, please know that Conference Room A and B here on this main level, now named after Mayor Corey. And there's really a quite lovely placard that you can take a look at as you pass by. Also, one other thing, generally starting in early February, ARP uses a space here in City Hall, and Parks and Rec somehow, it fell to us to kind of coordinate it. It would let the seniors of the Treasure Valley come and have some tax assistance, preparation with their tax returns and applying for the circuit breaker discount program. That used to take place up on the second floor in a vacant space that was under the jurisdiction of Public Works. But in the past year, they filled that with their building inspectors. So now it's cubicles and carpeting and office space, and there's really no place in our building that we can accommodate a steady flow for several days a week of seniors coming for tax help. So that won't be a service here this year, but they do have some alternate locations throughout the Treasure Valley, including one not far away over on Eagle Road. So just know that at the front desk or at all of our desks and offices and the clerk's office, we do have the list where people could go instead for that sort of assistance. Come February, they're going to start toddling into City Hall with their little shoe boxes full of receipts. So we need to know where to send them. And I don't want to steal, I don't know if Steve was going to mention this or maybe y'all know. This glossy magazine, Parks and Rec magazine, comes out every month. It's the official publication of the National Recreation and Park Association. It's a glossy and it's very well done, and we look forward to receiving it. And this time it came and it was getting passed out, and we all rolled our eyes because it seems like, didn't we just get one? But I think Renee White sliced hers open first, and she gave a little squeal, and we didn't know what for. And she couldn't help but notice on the back cover of the national publication is a beautiful full-color photo of a picnic shelter at our new Hillsdale Park. And it's a paid advertisement by the company that we purchased the shelter from. But that was a little unexpected feather in our cap, and it's happened to us one other time where we were prominently featured on a catalog cover with one of our new shelters. So that was a little happy little Easter egg that we got in the mail. Steve or our office have a couple copies if you want a closer look. So really, I'm working to build the 2019 calendar of events. There's just not too much to shout out about yet. So be assured we'll let you know of things coming up. I hear there's a coffee with the mayor on Tuesday, March 5th, but a location hasn't been announced. So I'll be sure to let you know for those of you that like coffee with the mayor. Any questions, comments, concerns?
For the
Anything?
Shelley?
Yes.
For the upcoming State of the City address?
Yes.
Weren't the RSVPs for that already due for us, the individual commissioners? I think from our last
I
meeting,
think
was that
they,
already due? I
they
just
probably
wanna
did,
make
but
sure.
don't feel like if you missed a deadline that you're excluded in any way. It's a work in progress. And like I say, with this being a new venue for the first time, they're just trying to be really careful about the capacity. At the old middle school, there was no chance of us going over capacity. Here, it's a little bit of a worry. So if you really think you'll attend or have spouses or someone that needs a ticket, I would go ahead and get that taken care of maybe this week or early next, just so they can really keep their finger on the pulse.
All right,
But
thank
yes.
you. Any other
Okay.
questions?
I had a
Commissioner Greer?
So I went and picked up my ticket.
Yes.
So for the Taste of the City.
Taste of Meridian,
I need- Or Taste of Meridian, I need to go purchase another ticket for that, or is the ticket that we get good for both of those, you know?
I think you're good to go.
Okay.
I'll double check. My nose is a little out of the.
Okay.
Let me check on that.
Okay.
I suspect you're okay, but let me just clarify.
Shelley?
So what do you think?
I think it should be one ticket.
Just one
Yeah.
ticket? That's what I'm
For both.
thinking too.
Okay. I
I'm
just
not
wanted
sure
to make
what
sure.
the.
Okay.
Or with a little, like a red rose in your lapel or something. I don't know what the symbol
I
is.
can
but
read it to you. Okay.
I think you're fine. Don't you worry. We know who you are. We can make a positive identification if necessary.
You're not going to let me in.
Do we
No.
pick up the tickets at your office?
Up in the mayor's office
Okay.
is where they'll be available. So, okay.
Thank you.
Hope to see
Any
you
other
all
questions?
then. Anything else?
Thank you, Shelley.
Okay. Thanks. Good to see you.
All right, next up, Mr. Steve Sitaway.
Before I walk up, Joe,
Yeah.
you did confirm that the tickets are available now, right? You picked
Yes.
yours up.
Joshua.
Joshua Iverson.
Just realized that was not Joshua, so that's on the record. I went and picked up my ticket today, so there's
right.
a whole box of them. for
Commissioner
people.
Greer, will you meet me at the podium down here?
Oh my Lanta.
So Commissioner Joe Greer is one of our super commissioners. She volunteers for many things, particularly Christmas in Meridian, and just finished serving with others on the art selection panel that we'll hear about next, which we're really excited to present. But as our outgoing president, we have a plaque that we would like to present to her. To Joe Greer, President of the Meridian Parks and Recreation Commission, January through December 2018, with gratitude for your dedication and hard work. And then this comes along with the certificate of appreciation in recognition to a valuable contribution serving as president on the Parks and Recreation Commission. Your outstanding efforts are greatly appreciated. Signed by Mayor Tammy, Councilwoman Genesis Milam, and myself. So thank you very much for your service. We really appreciate it.
Look sharp, you photo bombers in the background.
Right.
We don't want to dunk underneath this.
Probably take off my height.
Do what this is portrait mode, so you really look
hadn't told you. Everything else.
Thank you, Joe. Commissioner Greer, I'm very excited to have the opportunity to be president this year, but I've learned a lot from you, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, on to the next. Miss Hillary is going to be presenting the park identity proposals, and it sounds like we have an action item with this one. So if
I recruited Havana. Thank you guys for adding me to your agenda. I'm sorry that I hadn't thought about the approval process all the way through. But we did have a really good meeting with the Parks Identity Panel just previously, earlier this afternoon. And I wanted to walk through their decisions with you all to get your approval so that we could forward that recommendation on to City Council. So I'm going to start with Renaissance Park, actually, since Jake's holding it for me. Yes. So this is the Renaissance Park recommendation by the panel. It's called Illuminations, and it is by Ken McCall. So I'm just going to read through the quick highlight that he has to explain it. It says, Illuminations celebrates the significant musical, scientific, literary, and artistic contributions made during the Renaissance. Each portal portrays an iconic symbol, which signifies the impact of each medium during this transitional period in European history. The largest portal displaying the Vitruvian Man, representing math and science, the medium with the creation of Adam portraying the fine arts, and the smallest with the quill and pen, and the Stradivarius violin signifying literature and music. The structures of the portal were reflected by Renaissance-era architecture, with primary colored panels blending together to make multiple colors that will cast beautiful mosaics on the ground. The position of illuminations will be engineered to radiate a marker on the ground representing spring solstice, the beginning of spring, or revival, a corresponding concept of the revolution, or of the Renaissance, as it means rebirth. So I can pass this little packet around if you guys are interested in seeing the full details, but I'm just going to go over a quick few highlights for you. So really quickly, his acrylic model makes this look like this would be see-through, but this would actually be metal, so it would be basically the same stainless steel or steel here around the outside of this and through those veins. It's a freestanding sculpture that would be on a concrete what do you call it? Platform, yeah, pad. And the tallest of the portals is 20 feet tall. The medium is 15 feet, and the smallest is approximately 11 feet tall. So the little man is scaled there at 6 feet to show that people could walk through it. The idea is also that these would be primary colors, so they would be able to cast shadows throughout the year and not just significant for the spring solstice. It seemed like this piece did pretty much have consensus. It seemed like the easiest one for the panel to decide on for Renaissance Park. I'm happy to share the other parks or the other public art proposals with you guys if you wanted to look at them. And then I can also stand for any questions, or if people from the panel would like to add a few words about the conversation, you're welcome to.
Can I just say, I thought we had our commissioners that represented us to be on that panel. So if those individuals feel that we should see the other ones, then maybe look at those. But otherwise, if they've agreed and it sounds like they have unanimously for this sculpture, I don't see a reason why the rest of the commission should.
Yeah,
So are we all in favor of the individuals that were on that panel?
absolutely.
Perfect.
Okay, great.
Commissioner
Madam
Jessamino?
Madam President, thank you. Hillary, that is a stunning sculpture. One of the comments that I have in favor of this sculpture is, one of my favorite books growing up was Fahrenheit 451. 451. Thank you so much. I was like, I can't remember what it was. And the whole premise of the book is a world without knowledge, without books, without anything but a system, a system of indoctrination and that sort of thing. And when I see art pieces that educate and that promote and encourage my generation, future generations, and the public to really think and explore and, you know, just appreciate art like this. I grew up in Southern California. I was about 2 hours south of the John Paul Getty Museum of Art. And the more we grow our culture through art pieces, through educational pieces, through interactive pieces like this one, I think the more we're going to keep staying up in the #1 ranks as best city to live in Idaho. I appreciate it. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, and I did want to add really quickly, Ms. President, that I know that one of the Parks Commission's desires was that it could be engaging, the piece could be engaging, and I think the panel had discussed that because you could walk through it and because it engages with the natural light, that's how it was an engaging component of the park. And it is large enough to see from any of the roads surrounding the park.
Hillary, was there any concern with climbing on them? Because they are shorter, right? They're 15 feet, and are they climbable?
I don't remember that climbing came up with
Madam
this one
President,
as a concern.
That was just a question. If
These are not something, you can walk under them, and then like Hillary had mentioned, that during the solstice,
Yeah, these
the light will
panels.
shine through, and he's going to have a concrete medallion where they can all reflect on and show up, but they'll be too tall to really, I mean, they can try to climb on them, but really they're more of a sculpture.
The intention wasn't to be climbing on.
You're right. So
Thank-
it's kind of passively interactive, if
Yes.
not.
Thank you. I think they're very innovative and beautiful, and they've incorporated a lot of important
Yeah.
information and themes, and I think everyone will be really excited in the community to see something like this because we have nothing like it today that I know of.
Right.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Great.
Any other comments or questions by the commissioners? All right, thank you, Hillary. On
Yeah.
to the next one.
Yeah, off to the next one. I think, yeah, we can just
Oh,
present both, and
okay.
then you could do a motion for both. Okay. So this one's small, so I'm just going to pass it around. And I do have, I'm wondering if I should just share this guy with you if you wanted to switch to the overhead thing, but I might just pass it around really quickly so you guys can see the full concept of, they did a digital rendering to show what light would look like. But I'll explain it really quickly and then go over some of those details. So this is submitted by Trademark Design, and it says, the Champion's Flame is a sculptural representation of the competitive spirit. Every Olympiad, the Olympic torch begins its journey in Olympia, Greece, and burns steadily while it travels across the world to the location of the games, calling the world together for the competition. The Olympic flame is lit during the opening ceremony and burns throughout the games until they're closed, symbolizing purity, a striving for perfection, and life itself. The Champion's Flame would consist of several parts: a tiered concrete base, a metal bowl meant to house the flame, a javelin that would stand vertically from the center, and twisting metal flames. The flames would be painted in a shiny metallic gold on one side and a brilliant red on the other, catching the eye and playing with perspective and light. There are several opportunities for messages or quotes from past champions to be integrated into the sculpture, either around the second tier of the concrete base or plasma cut into the bowl shape at the sculpture's base. Lastly, durable outdoor lights would be integrated into the sculpture, shining upwards, creating a beautiful and dynamic flame sculpture at night. So let me pass one picture around to you guys so you can kind of look at what that light concept looks like. And then I'll cover just a few items of discussion, unless Joe.
Madam President, we have the packets up here too
Oh,
that we can pass down
Never mind.
the line. If
The one I
that-
was wanting to show you was just this one to show the light. The panel did have more discussion about whether to recommend this piece or another piece that was proposed, but this did end up being the favored piece to recommend, with a couple of clarifying questions. So the proposal doesn't outline the exact height of the piece, although the presenter did say it was somewhere between like 15 and 20, but didn't have an exact height. So that's something that I will verify and confirm before presenting to council if you all approve this design. And then the other one was that because this is not as, it's not seen as something that's as easy to interact with or engage with, I will ask the proposer if they would also consider making it somehow be able to turn, whether that's being by someone that moves the base by hand, or if they could do something where it's somewhat kinetic so that the flames would actually kind of turn at a base. Did the panel want to add anything about concerns or the discussion that took place?
Madam President. So with the presentations, there was another one that was more, it looked like a tree, and the top did spin, and so that's kind of where the spinning came into play. If you take the small model and spin it, then it actually makes it a little more interesting, I think. So even if they could just get the flame portion to spin, the discussion was, because the space is supposed to be roughly 10 feet, but if you can get it to spin, then it actually is a little more interactive. So that was our request, is that if they could provide that, and maybe if the lighting has to go because of that cost, maybe it could be wired for lighting later, because like Mike had made a good point that if we could get it to spin now, lights are something you can add later, but you can't really change the sculpture. So then it would be a little more interactive. This was not my first choice until if we can spin it.
Madam President.
Yeah.
Another component. So, of the top two choices, the other somewhat deciding factor towards this one is it was really more representative of the theme of the park, of the champion component, whereas the tree, while beautiful and an amazing sculptural and very interactive because of the move and the kinetic movement, really we could have dropped that sculpture into any park and it would have been fine, whereas we're really looking to create park identity, and that sculpture, especially if we can get the flame to move, really signifies champion, right? Olympiads are champions, and so that was another deciding factor.
Was there discussion on where in the park this would be going?
I believe in the proposal, they didn't list out on the map, but they said that in order for the power to be drawn to there, it would be oriented somewhat towards the shelter. I don't think it'd be right next to it, but the shelter is the only existing source of light other than the street lighting outside on Troxel Way.
Well, I was just wondering because, all the fields line up, and it sounds like if we would have this sculpture in there, it could be used for the ceremonies for the different teams.
I think as far as the location and the placement of the sculpture too could be finessed more with park staff to make sure that it would work for the function of the park.
Yeah, if I might weigh in, I think the location of both of these choices are probably subject to some refinement as we work with them to find the best location. One of the neat things about this one, and I think it was Councilwoman Milam that brought it up, this desire to have it be enjoyed and appreciated also from the street and those that aren't necessarily in the park. And I think this one is both interesting in theming the park for champions as well as making a visual interest that you can enjoy whether you're in the park or driving by the park.
Right. And then I forgot to add on this one too, there was also signage included to update the signage that would match the branding of that sculpture.
The signage on the private drive, or not the private drive, but not Ustick Road, but the drive.
Troxel?
Both sides is what we're going to propose. The park sign, not the subdivision sign. So it would update the park sign going into the park.
Perfect. Thank you, Commissioner Jensen. And then I see that there's a map on one of the presentations, and it shows there are 2 red stars, and one of them puts the star in between the shelter and the playground.
Are you talking about the Stephanie Inman presentation? Yeah. So that was a different.
Okay.
Oh, that might be Ken McCall's though. I think that's Ken's.
All right. I was just trying
to visualize where it would be.
Yes, visualize in that way. If it was at that red star, if that is one of the potentials, it would make sense that then the teams coming off the main fields can do their ceremonies, their little, ice cream or whoever, how they do that and do their handshake in front of that. That would make sense to me versus back at the other side of the shelter, which would cut it off kind of. So anyhow.
Yeah, Madam President, that makes the most sense to me too, as far as making that also something that people could engage with.
Yes.
Because part of the proposal was that there would be kind of that large flat base. People could sit and enjoy it as a bench also, but people could also take their group photos there or make it a part of like a celebratory function at the end of a season or something like that.
Yes,
So-
I just like where that star is, if that was being considered for this location. I know the fields on the other side of the playground are used heavily. The half field, that's not an official field, is used as a field for the smaller, younger children. And so the other location looks like it would be ideal if they were able to engage the teams with the sculpture. But I think it's very beautiful, very creative. I love the idea of it spinning. I think that adds like a whole nother level, which sounds amazing. So I hope that that is a possibility. But for tonight, you're asking if we would approve the motion to present those two at City Council. Does the spinning need to be defined before that can go forward, or is there, we'll only get a yes or no answer, and then regardless, that would be what would go forward to City Council?
I believe I'm looking for a yes or no answer from you, and that the intention would be that we work with the artist to see how we could incorporate spinning, and whether that's potentially, as Joe mentioned, maybe phasing light in at a later date, if that's the cost savings or a difference.
Madam President,
But
Commissioner
the
Steele?
discussion was that if we can get the spinning, that we would like to have it, but it wasn't a deal breaker.
Okay, that's what I was trying to verify. We're saying we want to go forward regardless if spinning is able, but that's what we would prefer.
That's correct.
All right, is there a,
Madam President,
yes, Commissioner Steele?
I would like to make a motion that we approve and send forward to City Council both of the recommendations for the art in both Champions and Renaissance Park.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried.
thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up, we have Megan with the Meridian Library District Story Walk Partnership. Welcome.
Hi, thank you so much.
Thank you for coming here to present this.
My name's Megan Egbert, and I'm the District Programs Manager for the Meridian Library District. And for a few years now, we've been in some conversations, first with Steve and then with Mike as well, about an idea that we feel passionately about at the library that would fit really well in Meridian. So initially, a few years back, we were looking at doing a story trail. If you're not familiar with what a story trail is, the closest one that I know of is at the Foothills Learning Center in Boise. And essentially, it's a picture book, but it's spread out along a trail. So it encourages physical literacy and movement at the same time as it encourages reading, a joy for reading, because it prolongs the story and you have to actually walk to get to the next part of it. So initially we were looking at this idea when we were working on the partnership at the Hill, thinking about what a perfect fit that would be with children, literacy. We have our tiny library there, and we were looking at a grant proposal for that. That proposal ended up not getting funded. However, we've still kept this idea in the back of our heads that we think that there is a place in Meridian for this. We think that there is a funder out there for it. We just needed to find the right opportunity and bring the right partners to the project. Well, most recently, Blue Cross of Idaho's Employee Fund opened up for their grant submission. And a unique opportunity that they have, one of their areas of emphasis is for senior citizens, especially trying to draw them to use parks more and trying to get them to be more physically active. And so the world's kind of collided with some other things that we've been doing at the library. Obviously, just as you all do, we care deeply about senior citizens and physical literacy in addition to just regular literacy too. We've been doing a memory cafe at the library for several months now in partnership with the Alzheimer's Association. And what we're learning is the importance that picture books have on memory, right? So not even those who are experiencing memory loss, but even before that, there's just something nostalgic about picture books, especially from your childhood. So what we wondered was, could we take the same idea of a story walk and apply it to a different population? Could we look at our senior citizens and see, would there be some benefits in doing what we're calling memory lane, which would be some panels of picture books from the past, not necessarily, Pete the Cat and like current ones, but something that they could share with their grandchildren, or something that would spark memories for them that would be valuable. So I had a great conversation with Mike just talking about the hypothetical of what if, would this work? And we identified or he identified, because he has much better knowledge than I do about all the wonderful parks in Meridian, that Kleiner Park would make a lot of sense because A, it already has the senior center right there, B, it already has walking paths in it. So what we would like to do is submit a grant application to Blue Cross Employee Fund to see if they are the right investor for this, and if they also recognize the potential in this idea. And so we just wanted to run it by you to see what questions that you might have, what ideas that you might have. There is a very quick turnaround time because it is due on Friday, the application. And with the holidays happening, it was really hard to get information. I have been talking to other libraries. Nobody that I know of has done this specifically for this population, which I think gives it a unique appeal, but also can make it a little hard to find information. But several libraries have done story walks of some kind, so I am able to get some budget information about, the signage and the best materials to use and that type of stuff as well.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
Can you set me through the story walk that would, if we did this at Kleiner, hypothetically, there would be like mini tiny libraries that each have these books?
No, I'm sorry. So I have a picture here. So essentially it would be one story at a time, one picture book at a time, spread out along a walking path. And so you would walk as you would read the story. And then that story can be rotated because of the way that the signs are designed. So seasonally, it could change, and it could be a different book that's displayed there. And usually there's room at the bottom of them for, attribution. Like one of them, that I don't think I have pictures of that one, but one of them was funded by the Rotary Club. So it's like, thanks to the Rotary Club. There's a little bit about it at the bottom, too. And can I just pass these around? Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
What I'm talking about. So the signs are permanent, and then the branding on them, so your logo, our logo, a funder's logo, but then the story changes. So it's a little bit different every time that people visit, too.
Madam President?
Yes.
Megan, do you know how many of these you're planning on?
It would really kind of depend on what we decide is best. So usually a picture book has 32 pages, not usually, almost always. So broken in half, that would be 16. But there's different ways that you could do it where you could have 2 on one signage, then you're looking at 8. So it's pretty adjustable depending on what works for the area.
And are you looking at purchasing? I saw in the proposal some of the prefabricated panels that would be plexiglass or something like it that would be interchangeable. Is that the model you're looking at purchasing?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
I do like those.
Yeah.
So each sign would have just the pages, like 2 pages visible within it?
Right.
And that's not an electronic page?
No, yeah. So there's 2 ways you can do it, not to get too into the weeds, but because of copyright, the easiest way to do it is to actually purchase 3 copies of the book, take the book apart, and then you're displaying the physical pages. You can also, you can actually make photocopies of them and like enlarge them and do things, but you have to actually ask permission to do that. So it's a little easier to just get the signage that will actually fit the pages of a picture book, which are pretty large.
And then I may have missed it. So how many of these signs do you anticipate? You don't know yet, but like roughly?
It could be a little flexible is what we were saying. So a picture book has 32 pages, which would mean 16 signs if you were going to do one for each one, but it also has because we could custom order the signs, we could do double up, and so then we'd be looking at like 8. It kind of depends on how far apart, you would want them, and some other factors too, but it's pretty flexible.
And with Kleiner Park, the walking paths, because some of them kind of intertwine, are we talking about mainly just around the outside perimeter walking path would be on this image?
Excuse me. So because this is specifically geared towards seniors, I was thinking about to install them around the senior center so you could go out of the front door and you'd go to the first stop, and then there's a pathway that takes you around by the pond and back up and around, and so you could theoretically, a senior citizen could go out of the senior center either walking. So they wouldn't be that spread out that far because you have to consider that somebody with limited mobility would have to be able to access it. And I think 100-yard walk might be pushing it even. So we'd have to gauge that. We definitely want them at a height that you could view them from a wheelchair or a scooter. Or if somebody was fairly mobile, they could just walk from story to story to story. But primarily right around the senior center and the Rock of Honor and the new Memorial Plaza, just in that general area.
Would the tree area, would that be included? And also like the gardening area? No, it'd stay on the other side?
No, the Arboretum, so that would be on the other side at least. I mean, I was thinking that it would be outside the front door of the senior center and around by the pond.
Okay, great, thank
So you have that
It helps,
picturesque-
yes, it helps,
yeah.
and it helps me figure out exactly where these
Yep.
signs would be and how that all intertwines, rather than having signs so far apart going around the main path.
Yeah,
there, so-
you would be, if you stopped at one to read one, you could see where the next one is.
Right.
So you wouldn't get lost.
Right.
Thank you. Any other questions from the commissioners? Well, it sounds wonderful. I
Thank you.
really hope that goes well with Blue Cross's.
Thank you so much.
And that you find a funding source, because
Yeah.
that sounds like it'd be a wonderful addition for our seniors, and in Kleiner Park would be a perfect location for that. So
Great.
that's really bringing the best of both worlds. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much.
All right. Next up, we have Mr. Jake Garrow with our Meridian Parks Department classes and camp update.
Thank you. Happy New Year's.
Hey, Happy New Year to you too.
Okay. All right. Thanks for the opportunity to come and allow me to tell you the story about a very successful 2018 for our camps and classes through our department. First slide here I have is our revenue history. And as you can see, in 15, 16, and 17, we were really consistent, hovered around the $230,000 for revenue. And what this revenue history consists of is all of our classes that are offered through our activity guide through contracted instructors and our summer camps that take place beginning in June and concluding in August. So you see this in 2017, we were down a little bit, a couple $100. Then in 2018, we take this drastic $33,000 increase. Where does that come from? A couple of reasons. One, our instructors are doing a great job. And two, we offered a third site last summer for our summer day camp. So we have 3 sites for our summer day camp opportunities for parents that have children ages 6 to 11 where they can come in and we watch them. We do field trips. We do arts and crafts. We read. Meridian Library District comes in on Tuesdays. We do an activity with the kids, or actually they provide an activity for the kids centered around our weekly theme. Thursdays we end up at home court, and Fridays we hop on a bus and we take a field trip that also centers around our weekly theme. So, in our revenue breakdown history, for 2018, our classes, which consist of our preschool classes, our dance, our art, our senior field trips, our martial arts, or things like that, those revenues generated for those was $143,689, and the Camp Maridamu revenue was $93,703. That is up from $70,000 in FY17. So that's where that little bump comes from that third site over at Discovery that we opened up this year. Our outdoor adventure camp was $18,002, and our Let's Play Sports camp was at $8,200.
Now, Jake, while we're still on this, and this is wasn't this last year, the spring, where the classes were canceled? We didn't have like the spring camps?
Yeah,
so we boosted all this without those camps.
Yeah, that is true. So we kind of got in a pickle last spring break. We had 50 kids signed up, and it's just really proved to be difficult to hire staff that want to work 1 week. So I was actually talking with the Meridian Library District, got into it a little bit late, but I think maybe moving forward, not this spring break, but possibly next spring break, we might get together and offer something to where they come to the community center and offer a spring break camp through their department. We'll put it in our guide. We'll set them up as a contracted instructor, but we're trying to work through, they can't show any revenue because they're nonprofit. So we need to figure out what we can do with that revenue before we tackle that issue. So
That would be great. That sounds
yeah,
like a wonderful
and
opportunity.
it's much needed. So camp revenue for each site. Willow Creek was at 37.3. Willow Creek was full every week last summer with the exception of the week of 4th of July. And I think we ended up at 46 that week. We do camp each site at 50. So Sienna we've been offering camp at Sienna since I've been here, and I've been here 4 years. We were at $30,000 last year, and our first site, or our first year at Discovery proved to be very successful with $26,000 of revenue generated. So we averaged anywhere between, it's at Discovery for our first year, anywhere between 24 and 28 kids per week. So that's really good. So here's kind of a snapshot of our summer camp revenues, all the different revenues and the expenditures that go with each camp. Camp Maritamu, like I mentioned earlier, our revenue was $93,703 with the expenses of $95,735. And if you look over here, our camp totals was $120 for revenue, and our expenses were $117. So our camps are sustainable. They're paying for themselves. We do have a little dip with Camp Maritamu, but we make that up with the other two camps, with Outdoor Sports Camp and our Outdoor Adventure Camp, or with our Let's Play Sports Camp and our Outdoor Adventure Camp. So, and here's a...
Commissioner Greer has a question, I believe.
I do. So, Jake, what is it about the Camp Maritamu that makes the expenses more than the revenue?
Staff. So we have staff.
Cost of staff?
Yeah.
Okay.
We have staff. I probably overhire a little bit. I hire 6 staff members for each site. I like to have plenty of staff on board for 50 kids.
I believe that's
so
wise.
we have 6 staff members at each site. We've got to pay for field trips, got to pay for transportation. So really those numbers are, I think we do a pretty good job of recouping
Absolutely
what we spend out.
I was just
Madam
curious
President?
if there was something specific.
Over here on the side.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, Colin. I was wondering where the noise was coming from.
I also just wanted to throw in that this was the first year of our 3rd summer campsite, and so there are one-time startup costs for the 3rd summer campsite that are in there, and so we had to buy board games, balls, all the supplies that you need for an extra site for this year. So those are one-time costs.
And we did this year bring on a summer day camp coordinator. So that person will start first part of February, and they work until August. They work part-time up until the first week of June. Then when camp kicks off, they start full-time for that 10 weeks. Then they're done a week after camp. So it's nice to have that person run around arts and crafts activities, lunches, to field trips. You would be amazed what kids forget when they're at the parks, and so it's nice to have that person available to help get through the summer. Yeah.
Well, that sounds wonderful.
Madam President. And Jake, it was only curiosity.
Yeah.
I certainly wasn't.
No,
I
that's
know
fine.
that you guys totally rock the camps. I was just curious if there was something specific, and knowing that there's startup fees, I figured there was something.
Yeah. We incurred some startup fees with that third camp.
Sure.
So.
Okay, thank you.
And I am honestly, truly, I've been very fortunate for the 3 or 4 years that I've been here. Last year I had 10 returning employees come back, and they're the ones that make it go. They're the ones that are, on the front lines, taking care of the kids throughout the day. My job's easy, planning and organizing. It's my staff that's out with the kids that that truly do a great job, and we have the success because of those guys. So.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
Just because last year we weren't able to do the spring camp, and it is hard, and it sounds like in 2 years we're going to do hopefully with the library.
With the library,
But
correct.
so for this year, are we going to try?
No, I did not put it in the guide.
Okay, so you're not going to try to do the spring camps at all this year? That's what I was
No.
kind of wondering. Are we going to
Yeah.
try for that again, or no?
Yeah, I think when we try, it'll be March of 19. If
Just so we could do the library.
Yeah, or excuse me, March of 20. Making 50 phone calls to parents to let them know was, to me, it was tough for me to do that. I mean, there
And I
was
think we heard a lot of feedback of people that were devastated because
Yeah.
they signed up and they paid, and then
Yeah.
they found out like a couple days before. I
Yeah.
mean, you guys gave as much notice as you could.
We gave them about
but
10
they
days.
still felt like
Yeah.
they were rushed because they had a plan.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
I
okay,
wanna-
so it sounds better just to skip it and wait till that
Yeah, wait
partnership
till we
with the
get
library,
something-
hopefully, or something
yeah,
at least.
get something on
more
board with the
stable.
library.
Okay, I just wanted to know.
It was customer service suicide a little
Yes.
bit. So.
But for the previous years, it always kind of worked.
Yeah, it worked. You're
So it was
finding
just unfortunate this year.
You're finding, gosh, you're hiring anybody and everybody, but I like to hire people that I trust and feel confident with.
It
so.
sounds much better. I just wanted to know if that was gonna be an attempt this year and what plans were made, how to know and notify people ahead of time and all of those things. But it sounds like we're not gonna try that, and that sounds best. So thank you so much.
You bet.
Any other questions from our commissioners? Well, thank you so much.
And actually, I wanted to show you right here. Our activity guide is actually released 3 times a year. So we just started our winter-spring session, which classes will start in January and conclude in May. So in February, I will start the planning of our summer classes. And our summer guide will be released in April with classes beginning in June and concluding in August. Then we'll circle back to the fall with our fall guide being released in August and classes starting in September and going up till Christmas. So, and a little bit of a snapshot about what the community center looks like. Those times in the red are, obviously, those are occupied times. You can kind of see we're really busy. One might ask, well, why don't you just have classes in the art room? You got to remember that there's got to be a productive learning environment that takes place and is maintained, so it's pretty tough to run a art class with the martial arts class and things like that. There's noise, and so we try to be respectful of instructors and their wishes and their needs during their class times. This was last winter and spring, and this summer. We do fill up the art room during the summer months. We have young Rembrandts that joins us for classes ages 6 to 11. So community center is busy and used, and I will be very happy when we get the home court modified and get it to a point to where we can move some of those current classes over at the community center and bring some new activities over to the old community center. So, any questions?
All right, well, this looks wonderful. I think I saw an email about a new class this week that sounded awesome, which was the painting, repainting furniture class. And
Yep.
I don't know if that's an art room class or it sounded like that will be determined where it's going to be at and you bring your own project, but that sounds like a wonderful
Yeah, you can bring your own
addition.
project, and she's a great lady. I've met with her a number of times before putting her in the guide and looked at the stuff that she does, and hopefully we can get that thing off the ground. And
I think
have some people attend.
it's definitely popular right now in the different craft circles to refinish. So that's a wonderful class. I was really excited about that when I saw it. So
Good.
Really excited. Thank you so much for this. It looks wonderful.
All right, thank you.
All right, up next is Mr. Colin Moss, and he has an action item for us regarding alcohol permits. So. We approve both for city council. Here's a whole, like 10 minutes ago.
So we have I'll wait to get on the.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Madam President, members of the commission. So I am here tonight to get your recommendation for a proposed ordinance change. So to give you a little bit of history, so we have an alcohol permit that goes along with our picnic shelter reservations. And so you can make a reservation for a picnic shelter if you want to have alcohol. The way that it's been since I've been here, the past 13 years or so, is that you pay an additional $20 and you fill out this permit that is on the screen, and you can bring alcohol to your reservation. So at the time, so going back when I started, this alcohol permit looked quite a bit different than it does today. The $20 fee that has been there since I've been around was because we took the alcohol permit from the customer. We sent it off to the police department at the time. The police department ran a quick check. I honestly don't know what kind of a check they did, but they actually looked into the individual's background a little bit. They would sign off on it, and then they would send it over to the city clerk's office. The city clerk's office would sign it, and then they would send it back to back to our department, and we would, put our signature. Or we usually would sign it first, and then we would give it back to the customer. And so they had this $20 fee for the process involved in approving their alcohol permit. Well, a few years after I started, the city clerk's office said to us, well, we don't even look at anything when you guys send us these alcohol permits. Why don't you just stop sending them to us? We don't add any value to signing them. And so we said, great, takes out a step in the process. A couple of years after that, the police department said, you know what, we're not even looking at these things anymore to check, and so why don't you just stop sending them to us? And so we're at a point now for the last couple of years, our front desk staff, receive an alcohol permit, and they literally just kind of hand it to the person next to them, and she signs it and hands it back, and then we send it back to the customer. There's certainly still, probably an average of $20 worth of work that our staff does, simply because some of the customers, we have a really hard time getting this alcohol permit from them. And so there's a lot of time spent in following up with customers in trying to get this form. But we are looking at it now from the standpoint of the form, in our eyes, doesn't make sense to even exist. And so that's what we are proposing at this point. And really, I want to make sure that it's clear that the on-site regulations at the park would not change at all. It's really just trying to remove steps in the process on the back end and remove fees that we feel are unnecessary. So essentially what we're proposing with this ordinance change is that instead of getting a separate permit and requiring the customer to pay $20 for a process that that mostly doesn't exist anymore, we're just proposing to change the ordinance so that you still have to have a picnic shelter reservation. You still have to tell us if you're going to have alcohol, but then you can just bring alcohol. You don't have to get a separate permit or pay $20. And so the ordinance states that on-site, alcohol has to remain inside the picnic shelter area. The only time that you can have alcohol outside the picnic shelter area is with a temporary use permit or a special event permit, where you've delineated a separate alcohol beer garden. And we have several different rules with regard to that the police department has helped us come up with, with wristbanding if you're selling alcohol and all these different things. So there's still all of those guidelines for how alcohol can be possessed and consumed at parks still exists. All laws still apply as far as providing alcohol to minors. Those are all still in place. This is simply proposing to remove the process of the alcohol permit itself. And so what we would be doing is taking this permit and getting rid of it. And then, Rachel, if you could just click on the JPEG that's there in the... And so this is a snapshot of an example. This is our prompt screen. When somebody makes a reservation online, we ask them a series of questions. So right now, number four, as it stands right now, says,
will there be alcohol at your reservation? Parentheses, $20 fee. You click yes or no. If you click yes, it adds $20 to your total. And then Jeanette starts Jeanette at our front desk, she begins the hunt to get that alcohol permit from you, right? So now we're taking what was on the alcohol permit. We worked with the police department and with Emily from legal to determine some of the more useful guidelines, because the one thing about the alcohol permit that was really helpful was the fact that we could put on there in red, you can't have glass containers, and it has to stay within the shelter area and things like that. But then there was also a few things on there that were a little bit over the top, like if no providing alcohol to minors, and here's all the city codes that you might be violating, and all these things that we kind of pared down all of the guidelines for alcohol permits, and we now put it right underneath the question. And so we think this is a much better way of doing it, trying to remove some of those steps and some of those fees. The downside is that we took a little over $6,000 in revenue from alcohol permits last year. But my personal view is that in our role, we shouldn't be charging fees for processes that are unnecessary. So that's kind of where this recommendation has stemmed from, and we are here to ask your opinion of the ordinance change, and it is front and back. If you didn't look at it, the majority of the changes are actually on the back side. So I am here to ask for your opinion, and then, as you mentioned, there's an action item we would like for you to a recommendation to council, which will go next week if you do make the recommendation to approve this change.
So, quick question. So are we asking number 4 kind of solely so that we can prepare them with the rule? Is that why we're asking? If we don't take that information further, are we just saying that so that we know that they read it?
Yeah, Madam President, so I know one of, a little bit of the hesitancy in making this change is that, right now our alcohol permit, we ask the applicant's driver's license number, and we ask them, it gives it a little bit of a feeling of responsibility, I guess. Even though as we discussed it, legally, there's really not any responsibility on the person who makes the application. If somebody overserves themselves at a party, and especially when alcohol is not being served, it's not being provided by a vendor with an alcohol permit. If somebody has too much at the park and drives away and gets in an accident, that's on the person that driving. It's not on the person who brought the beer to the park, right? Mm-hmm. And so there's really no change in liability one way or the other. It's simply asking the question because we want to, well, number one, we want to make sure that people know those guidelines. We want to make sure that people know they have to keep it in there. And we want to make sure that they aren't bringing any glass containers. And we want to, make sure that there is a little bit of a feeling of responsibility when you're saying, yes, we are bringing alcohol. It is going to be, it's going to be a yes or no on the shelter board. So, if the police officers do happen to come by, they can see that they've signified, yes, they are going to have alcohol. In reality, legally, if somebody says no and we put no and they do bring alcohol, there's not going to be a whole lot that we can do. But I think that we would like to know.
Madam President, Colin, I think this is a good idea in the sense that I'm all for encouraging people to have a little bit of self-reliance, self-accountability, common sense, because we all know that in the world common sense is not so common anymore. What are we doing to replace the revenue lost from that you just mentioned, the $6,000 in revenue that is now being removed or not being collected from the permitting? Where are we getting that $6,000 in revenue from going forward?
I would say that we are not. My answer to that would be that it's not our job to make revenue as a government entity. It's our job to provide services to the residents, and so I don't have a good answer for that as far as the numbers go, we're going to lose that revenue.
Madam President,
Yes,
what I would add
Mr.
to that is that the fees were meant to be a break even to cover the time that it took to process the actual permit. If we're no longer processing the permit, we're not spending that time, so it's really a wash. We don't have to spend the time on the permit processing, so we don't need the fees to cover it. Does that make sense?
Madam President, I would assume, Steve and Colin, that we're going to actually save some efficiency within the office because we're not trying to chase people down. We're not trying to push paper back and forth around and hope that we are doing a process that really isn't providing any value, correct?
Right, absolutely. And so I guess a better answer to that question would be that the where we're going to make it up is, very indirectly, where we're going to save a lot of Jeanette's time, meaning that, as we continue to grow at this rapid pace, we might be able to wait a little bit longer until we have to get another front desk staff person because we're able to be more efficient.
Madam President, thank you so much, Colin and Steve, for that clarification. I wasn't sure whether the revenue was going towards something else, and I'm glad you clarified that it was going towards the actual processing of the permits.
Correct.
Yeah.
All right.
Madam President?
Is there action? Oh.
I just have a question, really, clarification, or for my own knowledge. So to understand, because I don't drink, so I wouldn't know, but you can only drink alcohol in a Meridian City Park if you've rented or if you've reserved a shelter? That's
Correct.
what I'm understanding?
Correct.
So if somebody just decides, hey, it's a beautiful Saturday afternoon, let's go have a picnic in the park, spread out a blanket, and take a bottle of wine or a six-pack, technically, that's not
correct
allowed.
Technically, it's not allowed.
And we all think that doesn't happen, right?
Oh, we all know that it happens.
Is that? I mean, I'm surprised that that's actually the law, rule, policy. I don't know what it is, statute. Because it seems to me, I'm not complaining. I'm just saying, I've lived a lot of places where I'm pretty sure that people assume we can bring wine or beer or anything I want to a park. So
we're well
I don't know.
aware that
Just
it happens.
interesting to me that
we have softball leagues that there's alcohol at every single night.
Yeah.
And I don't think any of us would deny that. And so I think that's a larger discussion. And
no, I'm not complaining at all.
If the commission or council would be interested in that discussion, I'm sure that we would listen.
Is it posted at the parks that you can't, only alcohol consumption only if?
I don't think so.
Because that just goes back to the whole idea of the permits. Like, okay, well then why?
Right.
Why even have this?
Well, is it my understanding that rule's kind of there in case things did get out of line?
Well, yeah, and that's what I would think is that, having the rule, at least then you have something to fall back on when somebody decides to have a kegger at Heroes Park unannounced. There's just a big party going on. The residents or somebody may have the ability, the city can come in and say, hey, this shouldn't be going on without a permit, and they have it, and so that's why I think it is a good idea to have the permit policy, is that it gives the city a fallback if things got out of hand somewhere.
But is it correct that we still have that policy regardless of this permit?
Right. So the policy is going to stay the same for on-site. So
right.
You can have it, and so there's other jurisdictions that do it all different ways.
Sure.
I believe in Boise, they have a policy. I don't think you can have beer in all parks, and I'm thinking back to a long time ago, but I believe you can bring just personal alcohol, but if you're going to have over a certain quantity, you have to go and get a permit. Yeah. And so, if that would be, probably the next step, if that's something that we wanted to look at. But for the time being, we were just wanting to get rid of what we felt was an unnecessary process.
Yeah.
But a process like that, where if you got rid of the alcohol, allowing it to be more places in the park outside of just the picnic shelter, but then making sure that you didn't allow the big events that you're talking about without a permit. You'd go with something like what Boise has, where you get a permit for a certain quantity.
Yeah.
But for the time being,
that. Again, it was just more of my own lack of knowledge of that topic. So thank you.
Madam President.
Yes.
Madam, Colin, I personally thank you and the department for coming up with common sense policies that make a lot of sense and make the office more efficient. I think it's a great idea.
Great, thank you.
Save the citizens money. So do I hear a motion coming on for the proposed ordinance change?
Absolutely. So
Madam
moved.
President, I would like to make a motion that we approve Ordinance 1326, General Park Regulations as modified and presented.
I second.
Forward to City Council.
Forward to City Council.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion granted.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, up next, another action item. This is with our Ms. Kim Warren. Pathways Priority Task List Resolution. I'm excited about this one. You took all that feedback from our workshop, and we already are ready for action.
To some extent, Madam President, Commissioners, we did have a great workshop last session. The map changes will be coming to you next meeting, but we did make adjustments to the pathway priorities checklist, so that's what we're looking for resolution on tonight. Should be fairly straightforward. Thank you, Rachel. So the last meeting, I provided an update. I think you missed it, Commissioner Jensen, so I hope you're well informed and doing well. So just to give a quick recap on priorities and apprise you of the slight adjustments I did make, we've categorized them into construction projects for system build-out, and that's the bulk of our priorities. Within that group, we haven't, they're numbered, but not listed in any special priority. As resources and opportunities become available, those will be implemented. They'll be worked on concurrently. Some of them are already underway. So in general, up at the top, these are a priority, but they're not ranked in any particular order. And then down at the bottom, planning tools and process improvements, also important, especially our Pathways map update. But they're categorized differently, and in general, they're not as important of a priority as the actual build out. So that's a basic assumption. So I gave an update last month, and I'll run through these quickly and just let you read along. 5 Mile Creek Pathway, as we know, is our priority pathway corridor. So the bulk of the implementation projects, James Court sidewalk widening, the Fairview Avenue connection where it's a little bit sketchy between our new pathway at H2 and Fairview and the crossing at Lakes Avenue. That's a priority already underway. The trailhead that we've been talking about. And then the segment D, pathway segment, pardon the redundancy, that one somehow didn't make the list last time, and it's an active project and it really needs to be on there, so oversight, and now we've captured it. So that's showing up. The Rail with Trail projects, both our local project example and then support at a regional level, continue to work to connect Meridian to the Boise River Greenbelt through interagency coordination efforts, and focusing on Locust Grove and Linder and the connections as identified. So also some nuts and bolts kind of pathway elements, just finishing up the Lump-Larkwood pathway, and some thoughts on pathway signage. We determined that was more of a built environment item and something to implement than a planning tool. So, and I think we're specifically thinking there that we might explore some creative ideas for signage actually on the pathway with paint markings and wayfinding, and try to be innovative and cost effective there. So there was one, because of the segment D, that I added in that dropped off the list, and that was to improve the process for pathway acceptance and quality control. In talking with Mike about this, and Steve, would welcome your opinion too, That's certainly a concern. We want to make sure that when we've conditioned developers to build pathways, that they are being built per the standards specified in our master plan, and that they'll last, even though it's not on us to maintain, and that can be kind of a tricky enforcement on down the line. So we want to build them formidably. But I don't know that that's an issue now. I think it's one that we can pick up later. We could add it if that's a desire, but in the interest of keeping our simple 10 somewhat congruent with the priorities we've identified as a group at large, park system-wide, that one bumped off the list. So I would stand for any questions. This should look pretty familiar to you by now. Thank you.
Madam President and Kim, is there a resolution specifically for them to approve tonight?
I didn't hand out a resolution specifically. These have been written in resolution format. And I did add the resolution's translated fairly exactly in the same order. And then per one of the commissioner's comments, I don't know if it was Commissioner Steele, added in just a few bullet items of actions that could occur under those specific priorities. So we could discuss those if you want. Or
no, I was just wondering if the motion that we're looking for is to approve a resolution or if it's something else.
It was to approve it. I guess I haven't done this specifically before. Sorry. I do have the resolution drafted. We didn't include copies in the packet.
Okay.
So we can, or we can go through that in greater specificity, or we could get a general approval possibly on the list.
Pass you to Emily, if I can, Emily. Can we ask the commission to approve tonight with the intent for the president to sign the resolution so stating, or do we need to bring the resolution format?
Madam President, it's fine to approve the content of the resolution and authorize the president to sign the resolution later.
Okay, that was my assumption, but I do have greater detail if we want to get into it. I was just trying to keep it more at the priority list level. So
that I'm clear, the resolution would just be the changes of the list on our priorities.
Yeah, I think the resolution would actually list these in it, not just the changes, but it would just be approving the priority list. And just to, I don't know if there's a question out there about whether or not we think that this list needs to be prioritized, because we have had the commission prioritize in the past. I do not believe we need to, because the reality is we just need to know what the priorities are, and then the process-wise, we are going to be picking off 1, then 2, then 10, then 5, it's just whatever. If there's a meeting on the Railway Trail at Compass, we'll be there. If the contract's coming up on the Lamp-Larkwood pathway, then that's going to happen. So I think it's less important to try and put these in any kind of priority order and just adopt them as priorities and tell us these are our priorities.
And Madam Commissioner, to Steve's point, the resolution itself does recap essentially what I said about the built environment being roughly a larger priority, though not specifically prioritized, than some of the process and procedural tools. So that is included in the resolution as well.
Are there any other, Commissioner Steele? Nope.
I was just going to see if you wanted me to make a motion.
Are there any other questions or concerns with this as we see it today? Okay, can I get a motion to approve the content of a resolution?
Madam President?
Commissioner Steele?
I make a motion that we approve the pathway priorities for 2019.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion granted. Thank you, Kim, and I will look forward to finding out when I need to sign that. All right, up next, staff reports.
Madam President, I'm sure Mike and Colin are going to give some details on these, so I will give the bullet list of what I see as my top 7 that I want to just make sure you're aware of, just to make sure they are covered. The first one is the Pathways map, and Kim can maybe give a little more detail on this, but we're still in the process of taking all the details that you gave us last month and turning those into proposed changes to the Pathways Master Plan map, as well as integrating with work that on the walkability map the comp plan is doing, and we're trying to do them all simultaneously. So there's a great effort going on there. The second, and Mike will talk about this, but the shade structure at Kleiner Park Bandshell. It's a great project and very much underway. Approved contracts, I think, just last night at council. Is that right? So, art proposals is number 3. You heard for both Champion and Renaissance Park. That's a great one, and you just heard that. But I'm really excited about both of those art pieces and getting to add those to the parks. Might ask Colin if he would be sure to just give a little more detail on the concert series and concerts on Broadway and some changes proposed to that coming up. I also think it's exciting that there's a proposed extension this year of the farmers market out in front of City Hall, and Colin's working on that, so I'll let him cover that. Number 6 would be the Home Court Bay 5 project, which is very much underway, working out the contracts. We're striving hard to meet our summer construction. Right now, I think we're still following the concept that was approved and presented by the commission last year. So as we get further into the design and closer to construction, I'm sure we'll be back with an update to you there, but I wanted to make sure you were aware that that project is underway. Another big milestone was just this last week. We finally settled with the insurance company on the water damage. So we just got the insurance check, and we'll be putting together a budget amendment to take to City Council to add those funds to the project and get those repairs taken care of. And then the last one that I know Mike will cover in more detail, but Discovery Park, really excited that the contracts were approved to add the maintenance shop to that project, and we're moving hard and fast out there and trying to get ready for a summer opening later this year. So lots going on. Even though Shelley said there's not a lot of events, well, maybe there's not a lot of events, but there is a lot happening in the Parks and Recreation Department, and it's exciting, and I'll stand for any questions.
Director Sidaway, I have a question. So when it comes to the Kleiner Shade, now that it's went before council, can we see the final? I don't know that have we seen the final?
It looks like what was presented to you last year.
It didn't change at all from our last. I didn't know if we had made
colors have been updated instead of the one we showed you had like red and yellow, and we always said this is not the actual colors. The actual colors are kind of a blue and silver, so it'll be kind of a nice.
It would be nice to see it if we could just see that at the end, just to kind of get a visual, because I know we had said some changes, but I didn't think we actually saw the final.
Yeah, and we are still working out final details of elevations. We had an on-site meeting today. I have a meeting with an architect on Friday. I think we should be able to be back to you probably next month with some information. I'll let you take over, Mike.
Sure. So as soon as we're confirming the attachment points of the fabric, so we get the right height in relationship to the hill. And there's a lot of different factors that kind of play into it, because there's 2 overlapping pieces of fabric, and there needs to be 3 feet of separation between the 2 so they don't hit in the wind. And then you have, what's going to be most effective as far as blocking the sun and still allowing views. So we're trying to get the front edge of that at the right height, and that's what we're confirming now. But as soon as we do, and we get those attachment points, then the supplier can get us a shop drawing that shows the exact replica color, height, model, the whole thing. And once we get that, we'll bring it. We'll have that in 2 weeks, because the contract was approved. Our goal was to start construction while the ground is frozen, and we can bring concrete trucks in and drilling rigs, and because 4 of the posts, the piers are 3 feet diameter by 9 feet deep. So we have some pretty big equipment that's going to come into the park, and concrete and everything. Well, the ground's not frozen, so it's good and bad. But but the goal is anyway that we're going to be digging in a couple of weeks, about the first week of February.
Okay.
So we'll get those. We'll bring those at the next meeting.
Yes.
We're going to put the posts up, and then because there's only 4 inches of tolerance and 44 feet. We're gonna get the posts up, and then we can measure between the posts and order the fabric. So if there's any final tweaks to the fabric, we'll have time to do that.
And then along kind of similar to those lines, the Discovery Park equipment hadn't been lined out yet, our last meeting, as far as like there was some, we haven't seen what was chosen. Is that being chosen now, or is that already done?
In regards to what?
Discovery Park, the playground equipment and the shade, how that would all,
Oh, that's been chosen, and final design was shown with the interpretive panels and the climbing
saw
map
them.
and the sand and water play. I probably updated in a staff report that we are working on some final details, and those details are more constructability issues than really visible design changes.
Okay.
Does that make sense? I mean, I can bring it back and you know, I think what would be fun is.
if it's okay,
Madam
can we bring it back, just the
Yeah.
final, so we can oversee it? Because it feels like it's been a while. We've talked about some different things that went in and out of what was approved, that wasn't approved, that was pulled back in.
Sure.
I would kind of like a once-over of this is what we're moving
Absolutely.
forward with. Just to kind, from my eyes, I thought we hadn't really seen like how the shade works in the playground areas. I know that we talked about the different shelters that were approved in and out, but I just kind of wanted to get another one over. And we talked about tables that would have, similar to Settlers Park, how the tables have the shade that are taken down every year. I just want to kind of see exactly where everything's going to align on that picture.
That's a great point. I think what I'd like to do is I'll bring some current photos of the site to show progress, and then we can talk about some of the design specifics and bring everybody up to speed. So
That would be
both in
great. I'd appreciate
where are we
that.
right
Yes.
now, and then also we'll show design and then say, hey, here's where we're at with, you know, the building and the rock wall and all the fun stuff that's starting to happen. So yeah, for sure, dog park and everything's
Thank you.
taken.
That would be appreciated.
Yeah.
I feel like it's been too long, and I just want to make sure that we're all covered on everything, and we know exactly what's going to be being built here, or what's being built currently, and what to expect again. So
For sure.
I appreciate
Yep.
that.
We will, I see Rachel was making a note, and we'll add that to the next agenda.
And there's another question, Commissioner Gelsomino?
No, Madam President, I was just having an inside joke. They know that once I heard dog park, my ears perked up, so.
You want to see a picture, right?
I'd love to. I would
All
love to see
right,
one.
see, we want to see the picture again.
We're on it. The other thing that I wanted to cover is about a year and a half ago, we had a ADA compliance. Not an issue, but we needed to bring our parks. It was discovered that some of our parks and some of the amenities in our parks were not ADA compliant, and that dealt with sidewalks and ramps and all sorts of stuff. It was also the community center, and there was over 280 items that were identified in a report. So we were given a year to do the report and then 2 years to make the corrections. We've done the report and the corrections in a year and a half, and Friday we're going to go around and have the entire list certified as complete. So we're way ahead of schedule. Right now our budget's looking good. So we're really stoked that it's just going to be done. When we got the list a year ago, we were like, oh my gosh, this is what are we, but we just we approached it, we kind of just one bite at a time. And Friday is the day that hopefully we can get every last item certified. So it's good news.
And I think that's wonderful news. And is Fuller included in that?
Fuller is not included.
Okay, because I know
in
you
that.
mentioned there were some concerns with Fuller not meeting those. But so for this deadline, we didn't have to?
Not for this, not for this one, but we're going to go out on our own, and the same architect that did the report for all the other parks that's going through and certifying the completion of those items has been given the go-ahead to audit Fuller.
Okay.
So we know exactly where we stand. We do have some budget money to begin working on Fuller. We don't know what we know there's some things there. We don't know how much, but we're gonna hit that head on. The restroom is fully compliant. We know that for sure because we already audited that, and it's brand new. But there's just sidewalk connections, there's parking places, there's ramps. It's mainly the access to the amenities in the park that where some of the issues exist. There's cross slopes on sidewalks, and some are too steep and narrow, and parking lots too steep. But
I just remembered those, and I thought, did we squeeze those in there with that, or did we? But that's wonderful, so I think we should take a moment to just say that is wonderful, that you got all the ADA stuff, and on early, so, hey.
It's really good. We're excited.
Oh, that's
Madam
great
President?
news. Yes, Commissioner.
So Mike, on that point, I have a question. How has it been bringing Fuller Park into the family?
You know what? Fuller Park is a great park. And I think that there's, operationally, there's probably some things to bring it up to speed and have it fit the rest of the family. And I think what we're finding is that the neighborhood that's directly next to Fuller Park, the Park Creek subdivision, is the people that live in that subdivision view Fuller Park as their park. So we need to develop trust with them. I think some of them were a little bit maybe apprehensive or they were like, they really loved the old crew that was there, and the crew got to, they developed relationships with the regulars and some of that. So that's probably not the biggest challenge, but I think that's what our focus is, at least for me. The maintenance guys, they know what they're doing. They do parks really, really well. And I think for us in the office, that building that trust with the neighborhood is a good thing. I'm going to go to their board meeting in the spring and talk about some of the plans that we have for the park. We've done some tree removal, the ADA upgrades. We've done some seeding. There's some irrigation delivery things that we're working on. There's pathway repairs that need to be made. I mean, there's a whole laundry list of things. And I want them to know that we're going to love that park as much as we love all the other parks. And it's going to be really, really good and even better than it was. So that's...
And it's always hard with change. I think we've all been there.
It is.
Yeah.
It's
building that trust.
Building that trust. And then some of the regulars are retired, and they walk the park every day, and they got to know the crew out there, and it's like, hey, we're here. We're gonna love it too. So, just
sounds like a good place for maybe a new park ambassador location.
Yeah. Right.
Madam President, if I could just interject, and Commissioner Jensen, it's a 40-year park, and as we said going into it, we know there's some aging infrastructure and some bumps and bruises. But we love having the park as part of the system. I want to first and foremost reiterate that. As we've been digging into it, one of my favorite things that we found that needed correction was we turned on the water to go to the pond and we found this blockage from this root mass, and so we had to rotor-root out this the pipe where the roots had grown in. There's things like that, and there's been a lot of tree work in the park. We got a great arborist on our staff, and they've been doing a lot of tree work since the fall, and taking out dead wood and dead trees out of the existing trees that are there. But there's nothing in there that we found that's a deal killer for us. We fully intend to keep moving forward and own and operate the park when the ownership is available to transfer come next October. So it comes with its challenges, but nothing that's insurmountable.
How many more trees did we add to our inventory?
A lot.
I think we're still counting.
Well, but I think it's not so much quantity as it is quality. Those are some of the biggest trees we have, which is awesome. The park that park is so nice and shady in the summer. It's great.
Now, I have a question it's not on Fuller Park, but it's regarding the trees and the shade. When we did our park tour and we went to Rita Husky and we went up that pathway on the bikes, or maybe we were walking it, I think we were biking it, we were told that we couldn't put trees right there because of the water underneath next to the pathway, the roots were too deep. And so there was some discussion that we'd like to see like it to be a wall of roses. I brought forth the idea of doing a wall of roses, and it was to take note if that would be possible since we can't do trees. Was there ever any follow-up or anything on that, or could I make that note again, or to see if that would ever be possible? Because the idea was we loved that pathway and thought, oh, wouldn't it be beautiful if there were trees? But there's no trees, and we can't do trees because of the root system, is what we're told. And so if we can't have shade by a tree, could we at least make it beautiful and go with the park's theme, which is roses? And we talked about each year doing the roses and geraniums and the planters because the rose and geranium is the park identification. I just want to know if we could just get an update or put that back into the idea post to get an update if we ever could put a whole wall of roses. It would go with the theme, it'd be beautiful, and then there wouldn't be so much like this pathway in the middle of all this green that has no shade.
We're getting together in a couple of weeks to set the agenda for the next meeting. We could maybe even get together right before that or something. Since you're already coming, maybe we could just talk about it.
Yeah, if we could. I just know that we brought that up, and I wasn't sure. It wasn't a big deal. We just knew that we couldn't have trees there, and I just want to know if it was ever thought or followed on further to find out if.
To be honest with you, I think it fell through the cracks.
Yeah, I thought so maybe, and it kind of fell through mine as well, but that brought it up, is that we're going to go back to that pathway this year. We're going to go, oh, we thought about doing roses here, and if we think of it today, maybe we could just put that forth early and find out if it's possible or not. Because I think when I'm there again, I'll wonder if we could do whole roses.
Yeah.
But if everyone else is okay with that. Were there any other questions or concerns? We haven't made it through all the staff reports, though. I didn't forget about you, Mr. Colin
Okay,
Moss.
and so I also just wanted to say that I was able to pull up, so I do the dashboards for the department, and Elroy had sent me the totals for 2018. So I was able to find my email where he sent that to me. So Fuller Park has 215 trees. So that's how many trees were added to the system by the acquisition there. And so as far as my staff report, it's going to be reasonably short. We've got reservations coming up here on February 1st. Every year is when we open shelter reservations. So that'll be a busy day. It'll be the first day that we have Fuller Park, and so we've got all of the shelters there added to our online system. So we'll be ready to go to start taking reservations at Fuller. Steve mentioned the concert series, so we've been doing a lot of work on that. I think I've mentioned it here before. We did have some meetings with the Arts Commission and in the mayor's office regarding concerts on Broadway and potentially combining those because I think we had done some studies that concerts on Broadway wasn't exactly meeting the demand for what the downtown businesses wanted it to be. They want to continue doing concerts on Broadway, but they're going to move it to the fall this year. And so there's going to be 3 concerts. They're going to continue to be on Saturdays, but they're going to move them to earlier in the day. Whereas the current concerts start at 7 o'clock. One of the complaints has always been that when the concert is over, there's nowhere to go in downtown. Everything is closed. And so the concerts are now going to begin more like 3:30, so that the intent being that when the concert is over, then it's dinner time, and you can find a restaurant right there in downtown. In conjunction with that, so I'll skip to the farmers market really quickly as we're talking about the concerts, but the farmers market, as Steve mentioned, is going to expand in dates. They're going to go from April until October this next year, which is going to overlap those 3 concerts on Broadway dates. And so we're taking that we're using that as an opportunity, not a challenge. And what we've already been working with Sheree and Brittany, who are our market coordinators, and we're going to take those 3 dates, and they are going to present those ones a little bit differently to their market vendors. And any market vendor who wants to stay downtown, they're going to, I mean, this is the idea. I'm sure there'll be some tweaking, but in my mind, what they will do is they will take the market vendors that want to stay during the concert and kind of clump them together in a spot that they determine is going to work well, flow well with the concert. And then after the market tears down, the problem with the two overlapping is that they're going to have to be setting up the concert during the market. And so what they will do is kind of reorganize how the market is laid out that day. It will be only on Broadway and in the front parking lot of City Hall and not include the plaza. But the vendors that want to stay for the concert will have that opportunity to stay for the entire day and take advantage of the crowd that comes for the concert as well. And so we think that the addition of the market vendors will be kind of make for a cool, full day's worth of activities here downtown. So going back to the concerts then, we are not combining our proposed concert series with concerts on Broadway. And if you'll remember, we were proposing a Live After 5 style concert series where it would be an after work kind of a weekday concert series. And so we are still going to try and do that, but because Concerts on Broadway is moving to the fall, it makes it a little bit easier for us to do one during the summer. So we're kind of separated by date. And so we are currently looking at a June-July concert series, either Wednesday or Thursday evening, right out here in front of City Hall, doing something that starts right at 5 or 5:30. And so we're working around a lot of logistics with meetings that take place here in City Hall and potential, I mean, obviously, if it's Wednesday, it would potentially happen during this meeting, which I think would be great. And so we're working on the logistics of Wednesday versus Thursday. Those are kind of our two dates. And so, I mean, if you have any thoughts about that, feel free to throw them out. But we've got Cherie and Brittany that I've already mentioned are our market coordinators. They are on board to run the concert series because we knew that was going to have to be contracted out as Kleiner Park Live used to be. So we're really excited that they're going to be on board for it, and we're going to be able to have the same people running the market and the concert series. So we're happy to be moving forward. We're also brainstorming names, and so if you have a light bulb go off for a great name for this concert series, I'd love to hear those ideas. Obviously, we are very early in the process, so lots to come in the coming months. And then the farmers market, I think I already mentioned everything that I was going to. It's going to be much longer this year, April through October, and we're really excited to have that long of a market. So it's just getting bigger and bigger. And I guess I already mentioned as well, so the market footprint is going to be a little bit larger this year. It's going to include all of Broadway from Meridian Road to Main Street and the front parking lot. And so from now on the market mornings, you are not going to be able to pull down Broadway and park in the front parking lot. They'll be using the entire road and the front parking lot. And so that was our compromise. Instead of moving on to Main Street, was to keep the current location so that we still have part of the market touching Meridian Road and having that visibility of the traffic that's going by all the time, but needing to grow where we were. And so we're growing where we are instead of moving it on to Main Street.
Sounds like you put a lot of thought and a lot of work in those activities. It sounds wonderful. I think the residents of Meridian are really going to appreciate that new lineup and the new event order. And are there any questions or concerns from any commissioners? That sounds wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. And is that all for staff reports? All right. Can I get a motion of adjournment?
Madam President, I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn tonight's meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All approve, I'm sorry. All opposed? All right, motion granted. We're done. Thank you.